Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday morning to you, and welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. And once again, do not forget the Now TV network. That is on my show, which is called Morning Musings, every Friday morning, 9:30 a.m. Central Time, 10:30 Eastern Time. I hope you'll check it out. I hope you will also check out William Bell's Now TV network program on Saturday evenings. Look, this is a fantastic opportunity. Okay, I'm developing with you, I'm sharing with you the alliterative pattern that is found in Matthew chapter 24, verses 4 through 34. That pattern is preaching, persecution, power, parousia. Jesus told his apostles to go preach the gospel into all of the world as a witness to the nations. He said they would be persecuted when they preached. Mark 13, 9 and following, Matthew 24, 9 and following. But he said they would receive the Holy Spirit, the miraculous power of the Holy Spirit, when they were brought before kings, before Sanhedrins and what have you, and that their enemies would not be able to withstand the power of their words. And Jesus promised to come in judgment in the first century generation. Preaching, persecution, power, parousia. Now, that pattern is found throughout the entirety of the New Testament, with very few exceptions in the epistles. I'm sharing with you, have been over the last couple of days, how this pattern is played out in the book of Acts. Very, very powerfully, very, very clearly. And I want you to see this. In Acts chapter 6, what do we find? Well, we find Stephen, who is one of the chosen. And in Acts chapter 6 and verse 8, it says, Stephen, full of faith and power, did great wonders and signs among the people. What's he doing? Preaching with power. Okay, then there arose some from what is called the synagogue of the freedmen, Cyrenians, Alexandrians, and those from Cilicia and Asia, disputing with Stephen. And they were not able to resist the wisdom and the spirit by which he spoke. Folks, that is a verbal parallel with Mark 13, verse 9. Jesus said, when you go, when you preach, they're going to resist you. They're going to persecute you. But you will be filled with the Holy Spirit. Give no thought to what you are going to say. It will be given to you in that hour what you should say, and they will not be able to resist or to answer the power by which you speak. Well, here's Stephen being persecuted. He's basically on trial. You know, they're not just talking to him. Then they secretly induced men to say, we have heard him speak blasphemous words against Moses and God. They stirred up the people, the elders and the scribes, and they came upon him, seized him, and brought him into the council, Sanhedrin. Jesus said, Mark chapter 13, they will bring you before the Sanhedrins. See? When Stephen is there, you know, his speech is one of the most remarkable and lengthy speeches that we find in the entirety of the New Testament. And by the way, the book of Hebrews follows Stephen's presentation remarkably, but all of that is another discussion. Now, as Stephen stands before the Sanhedrin, he gave his defense, and he accuses them. Acts 7, 51 and following. You stiff-necked and uncircumcised in heart and ears, you always resist the Holy Spirit. As your fathers did, so do you. You remember Jesus saying that his generation would fill up the measure of their father's guilt? Well, here it is. Which of the prophets did your fathers not persecute? And they killed those who foretold the coming of the just one, of whom you have now become the betrayers and murderers, who have received the law by the direction of angels that have not kept it. when they heard these things, they were cut to the heart. They gnashed upon him with their teeth. Now watch. But he, being full of the Holy Spirit, gazed into the heavens and saw the glory of God and Jesus standing at the right hand of God. You know, I overlooked the significance of that for years. Until one day I'm reading Isaiah 2 through 4, which happens to be one of my favorite Old Testament prophecies. It is a prophecy of the last days. The last days. In the last days, the Lord, I want you to catch the power of this. In the last days, the Lord will stand up and judge His people. Do you realize that the only time we have reference in the Old Testament, at least that I'm aware of, a reference to the Lord standing up to judge is Isaiah 2 through 4, a prediction of the last days. Here is Stephen living in the last days, because after all, Peter affirmed in Acts chapter 2, 15 and following, they were in the last days foretold by Joel. So here is Stephen living in the last days, okay? In the prophecy of Isaiah, it foretold the time in the last days when the Lord would stand up to judge His people, when He would avenge the blood of the martyrs. Isaiah 4, verse 4, and purge the blood guilt of Jerusalem by the spirit of judgment and the spirit of fire. Here is Stephen standing up in the last days, preaching to the Sanhedrin, saying, which of the prophets did your fathers not kill? You are just like your fathers. And they gnashed on him with their teeth. Oh man, that's powerful. Anyway, and Stephen saw Jesus standing at the right hand of the Father. Look, folks, if Jesus is standing, you know, when He had offered Himself as the perfect sacrifice, He sat down at the right hand of the throne. Hebrews chapter 1, verse 1 and 2. Acts chapter 2, 29 and following. But now, in the context of persecution, coming right straight out of Isaiah 2 through 4, in the context of persecution, Stephen sees Jesus standing at the right hand. This means that the last day's judgment of Israel, the last day's judgment of Israel for shedding innocent blood, that's the context of Acts 6 and 7. So what do we find in Acts 6 and 7? We have the preaching by Stephen. We have him preaching in power. We have him being persecuted, but we have him seeing Jesus standing at the right hand, which meant Jesus was about to come in judgment on his persecutors. Who were that? Who were they? Well, let's see. It wasn't New York. It was Old Covenant Israel. It was the Sanhedrin that he accused of filling up the measure of their father's guilt. Listen, folks, you really need to get a copy of my book, Into All the World, Then Comes the End. This is where I document this alliterative pattern, preaching, persecution, power, parousia, throughout the New Testament. I hope you can see the magnificent power of that pattern. And in addition, as a direct corollary, because you see, at the coming of the Lord, the heaven and earth was going to pass away. But is it the literal physical heaven and earth? Well, this book proves it wasn't. Okay? Regularly, these two books would cost you, if you ordered them separately, they would cost you right at $41. This month, August 2019, total delivered price, $30. Go to my website, donkpreston.com. BibleProphecy.com. There's a banner right up at the top. Click on that, and it will take you through how to order. Now, tomorrow, we will continue our examination of Sam Frost's book, The Parousia of the Son of Man, and you will see, once again, how incredibly wrong Mr. Frost's book really is. You don't want to miss it, so I'll see you on the flip side.